Welcome back. The Second Vatican Council rightly proposed that any work at congregational renewal should always take into consideration the spirit and special aims of the founder for the congregation. It is for this reason that we will now look at Theodore James Ryken and examine his own thoughts about Xaverian mission. There is no point in contesting at this point that our brotherhood finds its roots in Ryken's discernment of the Spirit's directive for him and his brothers to go and mission ad gentes, meaning to the people, and particularly to the people in America, a frontier nation in the world at that time. It was, of course, born out of his reading of a booklet in 1825 and was deepened after his encounter and conversations with a German missionary who would later become the future bishop of Detroit. It would be very important for us to remember also that Ryken, although enthused with the invitation that was extended to him by this bishop to go and mission in the United States, that he declined the invitation simply because he wanted to go to America as a member of a religious community. On returning to the Netherlands, he followed the unwelcomed advice of a priest to enter the Trappist monastery of Eulenberg. In spite of this, he never lost sight of the summons to go and mission to the United States, so that after the monastery was dissolved in September 1830, he heeded the advice of the abbot of Mariastein to go as a layman to America and to teach over there. Ryken's enthusiasm to go ad gentes could also be seen in his willing participation in the revived missionary enterprise of the Catholic Church during the pontificate of Pope Gregory XVI. Thus, one finds in his actions a clear response to Christ's basic mission to go out and teach all peoples. In March 1831, Ryken set sail for the first time to the United States of America. Acknowledged by universal law as a constitutional republic, the emerging country was then a new geographic frontier. In the 1830s, it was still considered as mission territory, part then of the margin of the church at that time. Not long after arriving in New York, Ryken headed to what was then the western borders of this new frontier, the states of Ohio and Indiana, and the incorporated territory of Michigan. When we look at where our founder chose to bring the good news, we would see that he situated himself at the margin of the margins. What this means is that it's clear that he chose not to settle in the civilized areas of the United States, but in those parts that were still in need of development. Now, Ryken entertained the notion of further expanding this locus once the congregation was established. He understood clearly that his sons would have to heed the summons to go out to the world just as he did. Thus, in the plan that he wrote, Ryken said that he would want to send them deeper into the wilderness in order to do the work of God therein. Not to go where civilization had already been established, but where it has yet to be developed. Furthermore, there is sufficient evidence that he did not intend to limit the congregation only to the United States. This was quite plain in the congregation's earliest prospectus, which unequivocally stated that he would not admit any member who is not disposed to go to whatever country he will be sent. Thus, Ryken understood that the frontier that the Holy Spirit has set for his congregation would not be restricted to just one diocese, something that was true for most congregations of brothers that were founded at the same time as ours. What the Spirit was asking from his brothers was very clear to him: to stand ready and be willing to move beyond the comfortable borders of the country of one's birth. To emphasize this point, Riken purposely chose the name for his congregation. For him, Saint Francis Xavier was not simply an intercessor for the brothers or a model of holiness. More importantly, his choice of patron for the congregation was never meant to indicate that his brothers would be rooted in the Ignatian tradition. In bearing the name of the missionary par excellence in the Catholic Church, Riken hoped that his brothers would consistently remember that their directive as Xaverians is the following. Quote, "The name of this insatiable laborer for souls will indicate with one word what is intended with the congregation. According to his example, one will not listen to the voice that says, 'You can also do good here in this country.' Rather, they would listen to this voice, 'Go throughout the world and teach all peoples.'" Riken further emphasized the universal nature of the summons by stressing that the future of the congregation lies in its fidelity to laboring at the formation of a good and Christian coming generation for the whole church, not just for a local church, but for the whole church. The congregation that he founded, with its international membership from the very beginning, would not only be the first missionary congregation founded in Belgium, but it would also be the first congregation of brothers with an explicit missionary purpose. The first and even second generation of brothers in the congregation clearly understood that they were consecrated men who were missioned to go to the frontiers, ad gentes. Although the congregation had remained rather small, yet it is unique in being intentionally founded with a worldwide outreach. The missionary demand on the brothers even bordered on the heroic, as shown in the following entry in our first constitution. Quote, "The spirit of the members of the congregation shall be a spirit of prayer, ordinariness, mortification, great zeal for souls, and above all, an extraordinary obedience, which will dispose them to submit in all difficult circumstances and when sent on foreign missions." What is interesting is that the pioneer brothers took this article of the first constitutions very seriously. When, for example, Brother John Sagers received his first assignment, sending him to the United States, there was for him no problem because he knew what was entailed in the vow of obedience that he had embraced, a willingness to go wherever he was needed. Our early brothers had a very spontaneous conviction. Wherever they were being asked to go, they embraced the summons, even if it was painful to be uprooted from their homeland. That is not necessarily something that occurs today, but it is an interesting disposition to be aware of, a disposition that was in the very fiber of the consciousness of the early brothers. There can be little doubt that in the founder's lifetime, the majority of the candidates joined the congregation because of its explicit missionary character. However, there are times when we can find ourselves wondering about missed opportunities for the congregation to expand its frontier. 3 times, the brotherhood received invitations to go to Asia, and 3 times, we could not respond favorably because of lack of personnel or administration in fightings. When the Belgian, English, and American provinces were created in 1875, the missionary character of the congregation, for all practical purposes, almost became inoperative. Each province began to be more concerned with its own internal development. Still, so long as the United States and Great Britain were mission territories of the church, there was still a sense of congregational fidelity to the directive to go out to the world. However, all of that changed in 1908 when both the United States and Great Britain lost their status as mission territories. The congregation seemingly lost its mission in the process and reduced the meaning of the word to refer to school assignment for the brothers. In the first article of the 1900 Constitution, in the phrase, even on foreign missions from the 1846 Constitutions was dropped. This development coincided with the institutionalization of the congregation, which saw the establishment of more schools, but the loss of its missionary character. Still, the Holy Spirit continued to remind our brothers of the original call transmitted to Riken. This call erupted most powerfully when in 1929, Brother Paul Scanlon reinitiated the missionary drive in the congregation by opening missions in the Congo, reminding the brothers that our work is to keep the spirit of our holy founder that animated all his actions. In 1931, the Belgian province opened a mission in Congo and sent out the first missionaries of the congregation after more than a half-century of having sent no one. Interestingly, the phrase "even on foreign mission" was substantially restored in the 1931 Constitution as a result of this. In 1949, the American province opened its first foreign mission in Uganda, and from there expanded its work to Kenya. In 1953, the English province opened a mission in Nyasaland, which is present-day Malawi, and a mission that continued for the next 8 years. And in 1962, 2 years after the split of the American province, the American Central Province opened a mission in Bolivia, leaving the East African field to the American Northeastern Province. In 1999, the congregation established its presence in Haiti, and a year later, it did the same in present-day South Sudan. However, it remains to be seen whether or not the revival of interest in foreign missions reflects a conscious and determined effort on the part of the entire congregation to return to the congregation's Adventist vocation, its first vocation, according to Riken. But what were the brothers supposed to do in the missions? Now, this is a very important question to ask. Were we sent to the mission only for the sake of being missionaries, or was there an explicit purpose in the mind of Riken? In spite of a limited formal education, or maybe even because of it, Riken exhibited an acute sensitivity to pedagogical issues. Not so long after he put himself in the service of God as a catechist, he observed that, quote, "Children did not grasp or understand anything from that which was taught to them in a mechanical way." In later years, he encountered the same problem in Bruges and lamented about it to church authorities. Quote, "It seems to me that the children are not thoroughly instructed by mechanical memorizing, for which a horse's effort is needed in order to obtain some results. Pastors usually leave their slavish labor to the so-called chapel ladies, who hammer these texts into the children in a disgusting way, leaving neither time nor place for the perception and understanding of those valuable truths. I feel that this is most harmful for a more thorough knowledge of the truths of religion. Because of this slavish memorizing, the children become disgusted with Christian instruction, a feeling that perhaps will remain throughout their lives." Riken's insights reveal that he possessed a certain intelligence, an organic one, despite his economic and educational deprivation. On becoming aware of the grace that was given him, he developed it by poring over works of pedagogues known at that time and learning methods that were employed in Belgian, English, and German schools. However, Riken sensed that the Spirit was asking more than simply rectifying flawed teaching methods. He felt that something in these children needed stirring. Quote, "Their intelligence is sleeping, and becomes incapable of fathoming these beautiful truths of the faith. And this is most regrettable for their future and consequently for Christianity. Awakened by the grace of God to his own grace potentials, Riken hoped that those whom he and his brothers would mission to would ultimately come in touch with their own giftedness, just as the brothers are supposed to discover and develop their giftedness in the company of their own brothers. Riken did not want the people in the congregational frontier to be dependent upon the brothers, however. The brothers are supposed to form and enable them to discover and develop their personal gifts. Once they had done so, Riken hoped that those that the brothers served would eventually stand on their own ground and contribute in their own way to the ongoing work of evangelization. From these discussions, we can see that graced giftedness lies at the center of the congregational vision. Riken saw the intertwining of its awareness and development in both the brothers and the people that they serve as vital means for realizing the Spirit summonses for the congregation. Interestingly enough, the fundamental principles revolve the counsels of the founder regarding the development and the discovery of each other's gifts in a language and mentality that is appropriate for the post-conciliar church. In so doing, it encapsulated the congregational vision in the following manner. Quote, "Your founder's vision was unique. He intended to form a community of laymen who, as religious brothers, would be sent as missionaries to the world. As vowed members of the people of God, sealed in baptism and confirmed by the Holy Spirit, they would participate in the church's mission of evangelization through a life of gospel service, lived in solidarity and availability among the people. It is through your life of gospel witness, lived in community with others, that God desires to manifest care and compassionate love to those who are separate and estranged, not only from their neighbors, but also from their own uniqueness, to those who suffer from want, neglect, and injustice, the poor, the weak, the oppressed of this world. They too are called to experience, express, and share the love of God with the world through their own giftedness." At this point, let us pause for a while and reflect on the following questions. Number one, on looking back at the words of the founder, what is your impression about Riken's understanding of the congregation's mission? Number two, given the realities that developed in the congregation many years after the founding of the congregation, do you think that there is still a way to recover the original vision of the congregation to go out to the world? Why or why not? We will resume the presentation after you have done your personal reflection and sharing.